Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to another episode of The Crossroads. I'm your host, Rashida Green. So I'm trying a new thing. So this episode, we're going to be talking about the clean economy. If you've been listening to this show, you know I had the privilege of interviewing Mustafa Santiago Ali. And during that interview, he discussed the clean economy. So we're going to be doing a bit of a deeper dive into that particular subject. But before we get there, we're going to give some flowers. And this is kind of a wild card because I've just been in the mood lately. So first, just let me have it and let me get it out of my system. The first person I would like to give flowers to is Project Pat. Okay, and then the second person I would like to give flowers to, actually, I'm going to give flowers again to Mustafa Santiago Ali. I encourage everyone to go back and listen to our episode entitled Clean Economy, and let's get into this. So, you're probably like, okay, what is the clean economy? And there's actually 3 organizations that threw their ring in the hat to say, this is our interpretation of what a clean economy is. That was the Pew Charitable Trust, a company called Eurostat, and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS. So this was back in 2009, okay, for context. And Pew wrote that in their report, which is actually entitled The Clean Energy Economy, their interpretation included a pretty sizable level of industry, different companies, various companies that could potentially be a part of the clean economy, and basically broke those down into 5 categories: clean energy production and generation, energy efficiency, reduction of greenhouse gas and gas emissions, water conservation, sewage treatment and recycling, and then of course training everyone to do these things. And Eurostat's definition included Pew's, but there was like a lot more organizations. So for context, Pew said there were about 80 corporations in total, or industries in total, that could be incorporated inside of this clean economy. And Pew included all of those and also added nuclear firms as well. There were also protections for wildlife and plants and restoring former mining sites. The BLS, now, their report was similar to Eurostat's. And, keep in mind that this article that I'm citing and utilizing here was written back in 2012. So there's been some advancements since then. And so let's talk about those too, because there's a much broader definition of what the clean economy really is and what it looks like. And such organizations like the Brookings Institute have written reports and lent their definitions of what they think clean economy looks like. But in essence, it's what we need to get to zero carbon emissions by 2050. 2050, for context, is like the benchmark year that a lot of federal and state, we're going to get into that, are targeting as the timeline that we need to adhere to be carbon neutral. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on that. And now let's talk about some of the work that's already being done in the U.S. And let's, of course, start at the top. Let's start at the federal level. So back in 2019, there was the Clean Economy Act. And you know what was going on around that time. So that bill both flipped and flopped. But there were some great things that it was aiming to do, like, to its credit. I mean, the bill was going to create requirements to reduce greenhouse gas pollution. It was setting a national goal to get us to 100% of a clean economy, which would be an economic-wide net zero greenhouse gas emission no later than 2050. And every federal agency would have to develop and implement their own plan to help achieve the national goal. And the EPA would have to have, oversight over this activity. And so, this would have been a really great thing. But again, 2019, things were not the best, not the most conducive for environmental action. So it didn't really go anywhere. But some things were happening and did happen at the state level. And now we're going to be turning our focus to Virginia. So in Virginia, and last year in 2020, they passed the Virginia Clean Economy Act, or VCEA. And ultimately the goal of this particular act, or this bill, was to reduce the state's carbon emission to zero by, you guessed it, 2050. And this was a sizable bill, bipartisan, and actually had buy-in from two of the major utility companies in the state of Virginia, Dominion Power and Appalachian Power. No shade intended. But, we'll get there. So this act, VCEA, actually is very timely, very important. Virginia is no stranger to having, or to needing and understanding the importance of having environmental action, as the Hampton Roads area is being impacted by the rising sea levels. So the state definitely has some interest in making certain that these things happen. But there's also, like I mentioned, it's bipartisan, and two major utility companies are having buy-in. So let's kind of get into why that is. I mean, to its credit, this act also has some certain elements of environmental justice. There was a pretty sizable case in 1991 in Virginia that noted a landfill was having a disproportionate impact on African Americans. So again, Virginia, no stranger to controversy. But with this act, again, still some good, that since it has been implemented in 2020, there has been a growth in jobs in the clean economy realm in the state of Virginia. So there is some power here. But we've come to the crossroads. Now, why am I taking the time to talk about the clean economy? Why am I taking time to talk about the state of Virginia and what they're doing? Why does all of this make a difference? Well, as we can see, and as we've seen, utility companies are slowly but surely warming up to the idea of changing some of their practices. If you've listened to this show, I attended an event which was actually sponsored by the local utility company, Pepco, and they were offering specific programs designed to help citizens save on their utility bills. And so when we see something like the VCEA and we see that these companies are buying in, we're kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe this could potentially be a way for us to win, for us as consumers to win. And we know that with these goals of getting to 2050 in the VCA specifically, there's actually goals for Appalachian Power and Dominion Power to get to net neutrality by 2045 or 2050. But these goals, this is not too far away from us, but it's far enough, right? And it seems like we're giving industry a lot of time to come around and figure out ways that they can make these new requirements that we have as consumers and as people, as humans, to make these changes, even though they may not necessarily want to. And this season I've really tried to take greater stock and stake into what we as consumers and we as people can do as individuals and as communities to combat climate change, to note and take notice and action of levels of injustice in our communities. So this is what I'm trying to do here. And so let's kind of get into what specifically we as a community can do to take part in the clean economy. Well, like I mentioned, we can take part as consumers no matter where you live, go to your utility company website and see if they have any programs that are aiming to save you some money, if it's through efficient light bulbs, things of that nature, or look into something like Solar United Neighbors. Look into organizations that may be able to offer solar as a means for you to have utility in your home. Do that as well. These are ways that, as a consumer, you can contribute, or at least feel like you're a part. But let's go back just very quickly to some of the things that are happening at the federal level. Because last year, the House passed the Clean Jobs and Innovation Act, and this was aimed at investing in the clean economy and combating our current and continuous climate crisis. And the key word I want to kind of pull out here is investment. We have an opportunity to adapt and take part in the clean economy as employees of it, or potentially as investors into it. And we can invest in emerging companies that will eventually and are now taking out and evolving out of this economy that we are now developing. And remember that the true investment can also and should also be the one that we make for ourselves, but also for our community and its continuation and prosperity. And really and truly, we have to be focusing on these communities that were victims and have historically been victims of environmental injustice. And I would say as well, this clean economy is giving us an opportunity to be watchdogs, to watch our neighbors, to watch ourselves, to watch who's coming in to our communities and wanting to take part in them. What are they really after? What do they really want? And, we can also support. I'm always an advocate of supporting. I'm always saying, support these organizations. They're doing the work so that you don't have to. And the more dollars you put in their pockets, the less actual time you have to spend doing whatever, picking up plastic off the beach. Just an example. And there are organizations such as the Coalition of Communities of Color that really focus on research and data justice, as well as environmental justice. And you're like, what does research justice have to do? Well, research justice is really under the premise that if you know anything about me and if you know about this here program, you know that I personally spend a lot of time reading and researching peer review articles, blogs, you name it. And I see a combination of things. I see a lack of access to folks who may want the information. It may be written in such a way that it can't easily be digested by the average person. And that really misses an opportunity, a prime opportunity to bring what is necessary to those that really need it. So research justice is aiming to fix that by offering access, not just access, but bringing the actual folks who can bring the influence. And you and I and anyone else should definitely be in support of these, especially because we know from listening to this show or anything else that we get it the worst. Black folk, people of color, we get it the worst when it comes to the gamut. So we need to make sure that we have data, not just to show the disparities, but also what can offer us solutions. And that's what organizations like this one aim to do. And that's why we have to get behind them and support them. I want to thank you for taking your time today to just listen to me do a quick dive into the clean economy. I hope something that I've said has inspired you. You can follow me on all platforms. Please follow this YouTube channel as I continue to make updates to it. And as always, we will see you again at the crossroads.